Now, some observations. There is a flow from Ephesus to Laodicea. From Ephesus to Pergamos to Thyatira to Sardis to Laodicea. There is a flow. A very fascinating flow. In Ephesus, you have all believers. In Laodicea, you have no believers. And Christ is outside, knocking. He's not even in the church. And as you read these 5 letters, it's so fascinating. There is no statement in the letter to Ephesus about any unbelievers. It's just, you left your first love. But when you get to Pergamos in chapter 2, all of a sudden there are unbelievers in the church. Verse 14, I have a few things against you. You have there some who hold the teaching of Balaam, who kept teaching Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, to commit acts of immorality. You also have some who in the same way hold the teaching of the Nicolaitans. Well, guess what? You have some unbelievers in your church. Some immoral, idolatrous, heretical unbelievers in your church. They're accepted. They're tolerated, along with their idols and immorality and false teaching. In Thyatira, the number of unbelievers is growing. There are more unbelievers. In verse 20, I have this against you, that you tolerate the woman Jezebel. Now he's not saying a few of you do it, you do it. It's as if now there are more unbelievers. And over against that, verse 24 says, I say to you, the rest who are in Thyatira, the rest refers to the believers. In Ephesus, you have no unbelievers. In Pergamos, you have a few unbelievers. In Thyatira, the rest are the believers. Then you come to Sardis. And in Sardis, verse 4, you have a few who haven't soiled their garments, and they'll walk with me in white. This is a flow. This is a pattern of churches being taken over by non-believers. And then you come to Laodicea. Man, there are no believers. There are no believers. Verse 20, Jesus is on the outside, knocking. This is a church that he would vomit out of his mouth. In reverse order, the false church is made up of hypocrites, no true believers. The dead church has a reputation for life, but is dominated by the spiritually dead, full of non-Christians with a few believers hanging on. Thyatira, the immoral church, deep into satanic things, still has a remnant of believers. Pergamos, the compromising church, has some unbelievers. In Ephesus, still a church with all believers. I think it's helpful to see the sequence as a slide toward Laodicea, the church that Jesus vomits out of his mouth. If it is true, and I think it is, that there's a flow here, how does the flow begin? How does the drift begin? How does it start? You know. It started in Ephesus, in verse 4 of chapter 2. I have this against you, that you've left your first love.